Hey pickles, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here and it's your first time, welcome to my channel. Hopefully you enjoy and you want to stick around and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell button as well to make sure you're notified every time I upload. This look was so much fun to create, but I'm gonna warn you, it's quite a long video with quite a long list of shades, so get a snack, get a drink and make yourself comfortable. Of course I'm using the PLouise base as my eye base today, but today I took shade Rumor 0.5, which is this off-white shade, because I wanted to get the most vibrancy from my bright colours that I'm using today. And we're also using pastels on the lid as well, so having a bit of a lighter base really helps them to shine. I applied it with a trusty PLouise 7071 flat brush, and the reason we do this and the reason we pat that base into the lid, so we pat down and lift off, pat down and lift off, is that it introduces air to the base, it aerates it, and it takes it from that wet stage to a tacky ready for shadow stage. If you're finding that you have separation issues or your eyeshadow kind of clumps up and looks patchy, it means you're going in too soon. Make sure to take the time to prepare the base to get the most from it. This base will be your best friend, but you have to use it in a way that allows it to be that bestie. You got to get rid of those harsh edges as well before we start, so I just buffed those away and went quickly over the lid gently with a fluffy eyeshadow blending brush, and I just find this really helps that base be at the optimum stage to grip onto the pigment from the shadows that I'm about to apply. And speaking of shadows, the first of the approximately 5 million that I'm going to use today was Opposition from the PLouise Watch the Queen Conquer palette, this really deep beautiful burgundy red. And you'll notice throughout this look 99% of the brushes I'm using are as small as I can possibly find in my collection, so that's worth noting. We're keeping the blends tight, we're using small brushes, and I'm just applying that little by little and building it up until the colour on my eye, you know what's coming next, matches the colour in the palette. Flipping to the other side of the Conquer palette, I then took Making Moves, which is this nice sort of bit brighter plum berry tone for the centre of the crease, and I just use the same brush. This is probably the only look where I don't take a fresh brush for every shade, purely because you are not going to believe how many shades I used for this. My god. I never want to clean another makeup brush again after this, quite frankly. Next, I dipped into Forest, and this is from the Carnival 3 Love Tahiti palette from Be Perfect and Stacey Marie, and I applied that to finish completing that sort of semicircle shape on the crease. Now, it's not going to blend into that pink very easily, but it's fine, we've got it covered. This is what I said, I used approximately 5 million shades, and each one of them was both necessary and worth it. Once that was applied, I took Forest's Neighbour in the palette Khaki, and I used this to sort of intentionally muddy the blend between the berry tone and the green. This is something you may have seen me do before, and it just really helps the blend. The same with Clay, so you can see we're kind of just working along this top row at the minute, and it's just going to help bring everything together. I kind of risked it for a biscuit with my shade choices here, and it paid off, so that was lucky, huh? Sometimes you've just got to think outside the box and take a little bit of a risk. Back to the Conquer palette and that same Making Move shade, I used it to blend itself out on a slightly fluffier brush in the centre of the crease. You could use another pinky shade if you want, maybe Positions. If I did this look again, I'd perhaps take Position shade to do this, but it worked out anyway. And then flipping the palette back over again for my turn, and this is where we're going to bring that sunset feel into the front. Blending my turn into Opposition was difficult, to say the least. It probably took the most amount of time, but it did go eventually. These shadows blend like a dream. Honestly, the PLouise formula is unlike anything I have ever used, and with each palette it just seems to get better too. But focusing back on what we're doing, I then moved on to the shade Risk Taker, which is like a mustard, really warm toned, and as I said, I'm using the same brushes, so the blend is moving up the crease a little bit more than perhaps I wanted, but I don't mind bringing the shades right into the inner corner. And then I took a piece of Me to finish that blend off. It's a really beautiful bright yellow, and these shades, this colour story, just worked so bloody well together. I will probably do a full look using these shades at some point in the near future, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Working on my blends is definitely something that I'm focusing on this year, and it takes the absolute longest out of all the processes of my looks, but it's worth it because it comes together so nicely with that bit of extra effort. With that front section of the crease blended out, I'm taking Rule Breaker to continue blending along the crease here, and this is a really lovely candy Barbie pink shade. Not one that I'd necessarily reach for often, but I'm glad I included it, and it blended really nicely into that sort of fire tone at the front. And then obviously, as I say, going back in with making moves, just making sure everything is as blended as possible is my goal for the year. For the green blend, it was back to Love Tahiti and the Tropics shade here, and it's a really vibrant green. This green blend honestly gave me some flutters down below. I have no shame in telling you. I loved the way this green blend came out. It probably took the longest of all the blends that I did in this look, but oh my god, it makes me feel some type of way, okay? Not forgetting that khaki shade to bridge that blend between the pink and the green. It just worked so well. I'm still, even watching this back now to do the voiceover in editing, I'm still so surprised at how well it actually worked, but I'm so glad that it did, otherwise I would have been massively scuppered, wouldn't I? Then zooming back to the Conquer palette and the shade Conquest. Are we getting dizzy yet going between these palettes? If you are, sorry not sorry, it was worth it for the blend that you are going to see appearing on your screens right now. Watching this blend come together when I did the first eye was such an exciting process, because obviously when you're doing that first eye, you don't know how it's going to turn out. You're literally doing it all on the hop. Obviously doing the second eye, you know what you're doing and it's a little bit different, but doing that blend for the first time is always a little bit exciting and a little bit scary, and just watching it come together was such a nice feeling. So hopefully you guys get that same feeling watching me go back and forth with all these shades. There was a lot of back and forth. Didn't mention that Kingslayer shade. That was just to create a really soft transition out to my skin tone. At this point I decided I wanted to darken that outer corner just a little bit, so I took Tactical, which is a really gorgeous army green from the Conquer palette. It looks more brown here, but I think that's just because it's against that really beautiful forest shade from Love Tahiti, but the tones blended together really easily. That is one point I want to make. The Love Tahiti palette and the Conquer palette blend together with no effort. I grabbed a little bit of the Elevate shade, which is a pink that breaks green, so absolutely bloody perfect for the brow highlight for this look, if you ask me. I know you asked me, you're here on my channel. Okay, now be prepared to drool, because this is probably the single most satisfying part of the tutorial. I'm taking the PLouise Cut Carver. This is such a unique product and it smells amazing. It smells edible, honestly. It's like sweet and vanilla-y, but that's not the best part. The best part is that on contact it literally melts even the most deepest intent of eyeshadows. So unlike with Vaseline where you had to really push the product off the lid, here you can see I'm not even disturbing the skin on my eyelid. I'm literally just tracing out where I want my cut crease to be, and it is melting the shadow. And then all I do is wrap a wipe around a spatula or the end of my tweezers and take away the melted product. Can you see how easy this makes the entire process? Like, damn Paige, you are the real MVP. With the cut crease marked out and cleaned off, I took that same 7071 brush from earlier and the Rumour 0.5 base, and I followed that line that we had created. Just take your time with this step. Try and have as steady a hand as possible. Rest your little finger against your cheek or rest your elbow on your desk if you need to. Just take the time and try and keep this line as crisp as possible. Of course, because we are using water activated liners later on in the look, there is a little bit of margin for error, but it's just good practice to be as neat as possible at every stage of an eye look as you're doing it. And then of course I just filled in the lid with that base, ready for our shadows to go on and create that beautiful pastel rainbow. But first of all, I took Tactical and blended away that harsh edge. We never want to leave any harsh edges apart from our cut creases, which we intend to be sharp. You want to make sure there's no lines of demarcation. All the lid shades came from this little cutie palette, which is the Beauty Bay Pastels palette, and I first took the shade Lovesick. You'll see I started off applying these shadows with a flat brush, but because they are a pastel shade and pastel shades generally are a little bit chalkier, I found it wasn't really ideal, and it does actually slightly start to lift the base on the orange shade or the peach shade that I go in with next, this one here, which is Golden Hour. So after this shade I do swap to a smaller fluffy brush, so that's just something to be mindful of. I just worked along the rainbow into First Light, which is a really beautiful pastel yellow, probably the strongest pastel out of the palette. As I say, these do have a slightly chalky formula and they are a little bit more difficult to blend. This honestly took so long, but I managed to get what I think is quite a nice blend across the lid. Serenity was that beautiful bright green. And then finally Days. I didn't want to use the blue or the purples because of getting them to blend into that green. Days just had that turquoise green quality, and I felt like it was the right choice. I debated not using it and finishing it with Serenity, but I am glad that I took that 5th shade. And then as you can see, I'm just going in over and over and over trying to get a nice blend. Because that join at the outer corner is going from a pastel to such a dark shade, I wanted to add a little bit of visual interest there to kind of take away from that blend, if you will. So I took a little bit of Rattlesnake pigment from Peaches and Cream, just dry. I didn't put any glitter primer down, but if you wanted it a bit more intense you absolutely could, but it just added a subtle shimmer, and the reflection of the light just really helped it to look a little bit more blended. And then of course I added a little bit more Tropics, basically just kept going until I was happy with the blend. For the line along the top of the cut crease, I took a selection of water activated liners. The first was Heather from Glisten Cosmetics, and I used a fine artist's paintbrush that I got in a set off Amazon. Honestly, a little tip for you, I'm sure I've said this on my channel before, but I find that fine artist paintbrushes or even nail art brushes are actually better for this type of fine liner work than a lot of the fine liner brushes that are on the market. And then for the end, to counteract the darkness of the green, I took Plum, also from Glisten Cosmetics, which is this lovely really pale lavender shade, and I just added a little bit of that to the end of that cut crease line and then blended the two shades. Water activated liners actually blend together really easily and seamlessly, so I love making the most of that in my looks. Another thing you might notice is that I'm doing lots of short little strokes rather than any big long sweeping strokes, and that's just because lots of little strokes are easier to correct than one big long swoop. For the front of the line, it was the Suva Beauty Hydra Effects in Grape Soda. This is more of a pinky toned purple, and again I just added that to the inner part and then blended between the two water activated liner shades very seamlessly, very easily, super effective. This look screamed out for a chunky liner, so I grabbed my Inglot gel liner in 77. This is my favourite gel liner on the market. It is super black, super creamy, dries matte very quickly. What is not to love about it? And I just applied that, as I say, quite a thick chunky liner starting at the start of my lashes and then going out towards that outer corner. If I'd wanted to, I could have turned this into a winged liner look, but honestly I'm not a huge fan of winged liner, so I just got this as neat as I could. Because I am aging now, I do find it a bit more difficult to get that crisp line, but we'll just pretend like I'm not getting old. That is not cool, Mother Nature, not cool at all. In my head I am still like 17, so that counts, right? Then I smoked out the liner with Tactical, just patting it on the edge of the liner. This makes it more forgiving if you can't get a sharp line, but it also really added to the look, and I don't know, I just thought it looked like such a sweet touch. It also helps blend the end of that liner away and just melts it into the darker shade of shadow at the outer corner, making everything all pretty and seamless. Mascara next to prepare our lashes for falsies, and I'm sure I don't need to talk you guys through how to put mascara on, but this is the Air Volume Mascara from L'Oreal, and I'm really loving it at the minute. I think it's a new favourite, so just thought I'd mention that. Lashes were from Unicorn Lashes, and these are the style Not Basic, and they are anything but basic. They are super pretty, and they just really set the look off. I'm a false lash whore. You're never going to see me not put falsies on this channel, just a bit of warning. And then I like to blend that lash line with a little bit of gel liner just to hide the shininess of the lash band. Give everything a little clamp with the mini curlers from my website. And then I moved on to the under eye, and as always I treat the under eye the same way as I do the lid and the crease. So I prep with the PLouise base. I also added a little bit of blank canvas paint for a nude waterline, but I was out of shot for that bit, so I have not included it, but I just added, as I say, a little bit of blank canvas. Added the base here and blended out any harsh edges. You know we like everything nice and smooth. For the under eye shadow, I have sped this bit up just because it was a little bit long-winded. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just adding those same shadows in the same order pretty much, and just creating the same blend on the lower lash line as I did in the crease above. You don't have to, you can just choose one blend to do on the lower lash line, or just leave it blank if you want. It's all down to personal preference, but I chose to mirror the crease below. If only we could blend this quick in real life, eh? And ta-da, voila, boom boom, the look is done. I really love this look. I was really proud of it. I think it is one of my best blends to date. You might disagree. If you do, I don't want to hear it. Let me have my moment. But in all seriousness, I really hope you have enjoyed this look and this video. Make sure to double check that you have subscribed and hit that bell before you go. That way you can follow my journey and you'll be notified hopefully every time I upload. Not only that, but you can follow me on other social medias. They're all listed below in the description, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, pickles.